I'm Adam.
And I'm Chester.
And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hey, Chester, do you have a pet?
Fun fact, humans may be the only animals to keep pets.
When you say that humans may be the only, that makes it seem much less like a fact and more like a possibility.
That's because it depends on how you frame the question.
Okay, so are humans the only animals that have pets?
No, there's been plenty of examples of animals in captivity keeping pets, the most famous being Coco and her cat.
So what's the problem?
All of these have been in captivity and not in the wild.
Okay then, so are humans the only animals that have pets in their natural habitat?
Eliminating what is considered to be a human's natural habitat. Maybe. There have been sightings of capuchins raising marmosets, but this may have been more of an adoption less than a pet.
I see. In today's book, Osnat has a pet dove that helps her with her religious studies. Let's get started. Osnat and Her Dove, the true story of the world's first female rabbi, written by Sigal Samuel, illustrated by Valiant Mincy. Almost 500 years ago, when almost everyone believed in miracles, a baby girl was born in the Middle East. Her name was Osnat. Nobody knew it yet, but she would become the first female rabbi in history. Osnat grew up surrounded by books in the city of Mosul. Her father, Rabbi Samuel Barzani, built a yeshiva where men studied Torah all day long. Because Rabbi Barzani often traveled from town to town building more yeshivas, Osnat spent many hours alone with books. She stared and sniffed. She peeked and poked. What secrets were they hiding? "Show me how to read," she begged her father one day. Rabbi Barzani said, "Girls spend their time on chores. Reading is for boys." But Osnat replied, "You don't have any boys. If your daughter wants to learn, why not teach her?" And so he did. Osnat loved the shapes of the Hebrew letters. One looked like a mysterious animal, and another a creeping vine. She also loved the answers that the Torah's words provided. Each gave rise to 7 new questions in her mind. During one of her father's travels, Osnat watched from her window as a white dove landed in a nearby tree. She brought some leftover kubba from her dinner and dropped it into his open beak. The spicy treat became his favorite snack. Over time, Osnat read to the dove whenever she was lonely. She felt as if she were reading along with her. In this way, they became good friends. One day, Rabbi Barzani returned from a long trip and gazed at his daughter. "You look very grown up," he said. "Soon it will be time for you to get married." Osnat crossed her arms and objected. "If I have a husband, he'll expect me to do chores, and I won't have enough time for Torah study." Rabbi Barzani agreed that it would be a waste of Osnat's curious mind. So he told all the young men who came to visit that they couldn't marry his daughter unless they promised to excuse her from doing chores. The men were shocked. No cooking? No cleaning? No, thank you.
Fun fact, according to an American Time Use study from 2003-2016, there's a direct relation between education and cooking.
That's probably because of the increase in popularity of the Food Network and other cooking shows.
Maybe, but the findings were not the same for males and females.
Oh, really?
The study found that the higher education that a male receives, the more likely he is to cook, but the higher education that a female receives, the less likely she is to cook.
Interesting.
Regardless, women still do much more of the cooking at home, with 70% of females cooking at home compared to 46% for males.
But one man, Jacob, was different. He swore that if Osnat married him, she could study Torah all day long. Osnat smiled and asked her father to write up her ketubah, her wedding contract. Then she married Jacob, dancing outdoors as musicians trumpeted on the zurna and drummed on the duvol. Jacob kept his promise, and the couple raised a happy family. But eventually, Rabbi Barzani passed away. Osnat cried, missing her father, and her dove cried with her. Jacob became the head of the yeshiva. But he was too busy with his own Torah study to teach the students. They grew restless and rowdy. Osnat knew something had to be done. She began to teach the students herself. As she spoke the Hebrew words, she felt comforted, as if her father were close by. For years, Osnat taught Torah, but then Jacob passed away. Osnat was heartbroken, and with her husband gone, there was nobody to take over as head of the yeshiva. No one had ever heard of a woman leading a yeshiva anywhere in the world. Could Osnat do it? In bed, she tossed and turned. What would the students think if she officially became their teacher? One night, Osnat's father came to her in a dream. He didn't speak, but as if to give her a sign, he smiled at her. The next morning, the students smiled too. They already knew what a smart and kind teacher Osnat was. Now she was going to be their leader. What could be better than that? One day, while Osnat was home preparing her Torah lessons, she heard loud noises through her window. A sharp cry, a soft thump, then screams. She ran outside. A hunter was standing over her pet dove. The dove's wings were very still. Children were screaming at the hunter, "You shot the bird!" Osnat didn't say a word. She took her beloved pet inside and closed the door. The hunter and children waited outside. They waited and waited and waited. Finally, the silent air filled with rustling. The door opened and the dove came flying out. The crowd looked at Osnat with astonished eyes. Had she healed him? Wow, that's shocking.
That she revived the bird?
No. Why was someone hunting birds with a bow and arrow at a school?
Fun fact, in 2021, Senate Bill 161 allows Arkansas's public schools to incorporate a hunter safety course into their physical education curriculum for grades 5 through 12.
That's great and all, but I still have a hard time believing that they're actively hunting on school grounds.
I think the takeaway here is supposed to be that she may have resurrected the bird.
This is an impressive feat too. Rumors of Osnat's power spread across the city. Many came to her for blessings. The sick, the poor, the heartbroken, all believed she had the power to heal them. At Osnat's yeshiva, the men called her Tanait, a title given only to the most respected teachers. They said she knew the deepest secrets of the Torah, and that's where her power came from. Rabbis from near and far began sending her letters. One called her, "My mother, my rabbi." Another letter invited Osnat to celebrate Rosh Chodesh, the holiday of the new moon, with the Jews in the town of Ahmadiyya. Osnat traveled there with her dove. When she arrived, Osnat was disappointed to see that the townspeople were celebrating inside their synagogue in the weak light of a few candles. "Come and dance outside," she said, "in the light of the beautiful new moon." They celebrated under the open night sky, dancing and singing until they smelled smoke. It was a good thing they were all outside. The synagogue was on fire. The precious Torah scrolls were still inside. Osnat acted fast. She whispered the secret Hebrew names of angels, which her father had taught her. At the same moment, her dove flew into the sky. Some of the panicking people, peering through the smoke, thought they saw the bird multiply into many birds. Some thought they saw angels. The white creatures beat the flames with their wings until they put out the fire. Then they disappeared. When the smoke cleared, the townspeople found that the synagogue was not burned. The Torah scrolls inside were not burned either. The people were so grateful to Osnat that they renamed the synagogue after her. After a long life of leadership, Rabbi Osnat Barzani died and was buried in Ahmadiyya. People from all over came to visit her grave. They continued to ask for her blessings, believing she had the power to heal them. Today, her story lives on in the legends of Iraq. They tell of a woman with a curious mind, kind heart, and according to some, miraculous power. the first female rabbi in history.
I didn't realize that this book was a legend.
Or a fantasy.
No, it's a legend.
What's the difference?
A legend is a traditional story, sometimes popularly regarded as a historical story, but unauthenticated.
Whereas a fantasy
is the opposite. A fantasy is an idea with no basis in reality.
Regardless, it's a nice story. Do you know what I hope is not a fantasy?
I don't know, but I'm guessing it has something to do with you.
I hope that you like this video and subscribe to the channel.
And that's no fantasy.
Exactly. I'm Adam.
And I'm Chester.
And this is
Where There's a Williams, There's a Way.
Author's note. Osnat Barzani was born in 1590 in Mosul, located in modern-day Iraq, and died in 1670 in the nearby town of Ahmadiyya. Her supportive father, Rabbi Samuel ben Natal Halev Levi Barzani, gave her a rare education in Hebrew, Torah, Talmud, Midrash, and Kabbalah. Her letters show that she was not only a brilliant scholar, but also a poet. In one letter, Osnat described her childhood. I never left the entrance to my house or went outside. I was like a princess of Israel. I grew up in the laps of scholars anchored to my father of blessed memory. I was never taught any work but sacred study. After both her father and her husband died, the leadership of the Mosul yeshiva passed to Osnat without controversy. She was already such a respected teacher that people didn't see her gender as an issue. This was extremely unusual for the times. Despite the school's constant lack of money and Osnat's own poverty, her home, clothes, books, and belongings were confiscated to pay off debts. She ran the yeshiva successfully. Folk tales tells us that Osnat's father would appear to her in dreams, teaching her how to escape upcoming dangers. Legends found in amulets mention her supernatural abilities, like limiting how many children she had so she could focus on her studies, and freezing an intruder in his tracks by shouting out holy names of God. In recounting her life story, I've drawn on these tales and legends, while taking some liberties in imagining how her childhood, marriage, and miracles might have looked. Although few of her writings have been preserved, Osnat is still remembered locally as the first female rabbi and the first female Kurdish Jewish leader. Did you know there's no difference between a dove and a pigeon, but colloquial English often categorizes them according to size? Birds referred to as doves are typically smaller than those called pigeons. However, this distinction is not always consistent and doesn't appear to exist in most other languages.